In the deep ocean, 100-foot walls of water pop up literally out of nowhere when individually manageable waves of change collide, and they sink even the largest ships. The thing is that the same thing happens in business. When I was running the research service I was talking about, we identified 10 major waves of change that are going to come and collide to upend this decade, no matter what the instigating event is. And so the question really is, how do we stop looking at these individually? What's AI going to do? What are changing demographics going to do? And ask, how do we organize our companies to the range of possible changes, the range of possible futures, not so that we can avoid them, but so that we can take advantage of them. We need to stop focusing exclusively on growth and start focusing on what I call resilient growth. And to be clear, this is a mindset. This is the mindset that allowed companies like Amazon and Zoom to be successful over the last year. And a lot of people, they look at that and say, no, they had the resources, they had the smart people, they had the same technology. I've taught those same skills to my friend's family farm. Guess what happened last year? They doubled their sales while their competitors sank. Right? This is possible for anyone, for any company, if you learn how to look more deeply at the future and to take advantage of it. When we were re-architecting HP and we laid off about 16% of the workforce, changed our locations around the world, developed work-from-home capabilities, a lot of this, interestingly, drove resilience, but it also saved money and it increased retention in our organization. So resilience is not necessarily a cost center. It's about making smarter decisions for the future. Analysts in 2019 didn't fully recognize this. In fact, going into 2020, HP was facing a hostile takeover from Carl Icahn, the great corporate raider, and Xerox. They wanted to take up and divide up the firm. Something really interesting happened during COVID, though, which is HP walked away effectively unscathed, whereas Xerox, their earnings per share dropped about 69%. This is the power of resilient thinking in times of change. While efficiency may drive your organization in times of stability, the ability to turn, to react, to have those buffers, to take advantage, that's how you win in our increasingly volatile age. One of the things I often hear is you can't prepare for every rogue wave. You can't prepare for every contingency, and that's absolutely true. But you don't need to, because rogue waves tend to come in certain shapes. What you really want to be looking at is what's the second domino? What happens after, right? A whole bunch of things that would be similar between different types of events will impact your company independent of what that event is. And so you can prepare for the future no matter what happens. Let me give an example. In 2019, just before COVID hit, HP funded a smart diagnostics business. It was recently publicly announced. And we were looking at two things. One is we were looking at changing demographics. What do older populations mean for the future of this market? But the second thing we were looking at is, where are the hockey stick opportunities? What is the increasingly likelihood of, I don't know, something like a pandemic? And what we discovered is, just like I was talking about the iPhone, once you look under the covers, the likelihood of a pandemic was radically increasing, specifically a respiratory zoonotic pandemic. And so we were going to create a business that was successful no matter what happened, but had a hockey stick moment if a not completely predictable but knowable future occurred on the right timeline. And so what I propose is, instead of avoiding being overwhelmed, instead we plan for it. We figure out how, instead of avoiding risk and avoiding uncertainty, we use those statistical controls to control what we can so that we have room to run, so that we can make bigger bets while taking less risk in these uncertain times. When you think about the impact of change on your organization, it really comes in four flavors: finance, operation, external change, and strategic change. And we have our people focused on finance and ops. We're Six Sigmaing our way through the future. There's only one problem with this. 3/4 of the sustained decreases in firm value are the result of external and strategic change. And I think this is the focus of this conference today, really, which is we're teaching people to run the hamster wheel faster. And we're at a point where if we keep doing this, the hamster's going to have a heart attack. So we need a new way to figure out how we drive growth in times of volatility instead of times of stability. And I think it really has to do with how we link risk-taking and risk management, resilience, and growth. It has to do with looking at the different components of our organization, figuring out, independent of specifically what happens if a range of possible futures happen, a range of radical change occurs, are we ready? Where do we need to build our competencies, not just for resilience, but to lean in? And if we want to create radical value, radical profit for our customers, I would advise doing the same thing. Look at their organizations, because I guarantee you they aren't looking at it this way. And say, okay, when the world changes, how do we know that we're going to create radical value for them? You know, a company like Amazon, it didn't have a COVID playbook. I've talked to their leadership, but they were ready for anything. Resilience is the key to growth in times of uncertainty. Organizations that look at themselves this way, they tend to do significantly better in downturns, obviously. But the more interesting thing is what happens in upturns, which is they tend to retain that market share. And if you want to look at the future and really, really get ahead of it, you know, you need a process. You can't just sit in the boardroom and conjecture. You need to have a structured way of doing this in your organization. You need a way to bring people, all that knowledge at the base of your organization into structural policy decision-making, and to do it far more rapidly than we do today. And what we did at HP, and kind of what I recommend, is what I call the ABCs of resilient growth. Awareness, right? If your people aren't aware, if they don't have body knowledge of the range of possibility, why are they going to change? The second, behavior, right? How do we build the skills to surf these big waves? It doesn't matter if the tsunami hits if people don't have the skills to ride the wave. And the third piece is about culture. How do you build the processes? How do you build the incentives? How do you build the emotional space to have hard conversations about uncertainty? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you.